The Holy Gospel according to John, the 18th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
When I was a child, there were two classes I dreaded. The first was gym class, and if you've ever seen me run, or throw, or bat, you will understand why. The second class that I dreaded, ironically, was music class. And that was not because I didn't enjoy music. I, in fact, have always loved music, but I feared then, as I fear now, singing alone. One musical game specifically traumatized me as a young girl, and even remains the source of anxious dreams that I have to this day. In my dream, a 10-year-old Sarah wrings her hands and cries out loud, "But I don't want to be the cheese." This musical game that I'm referring to is called The Farmer in the Dell. It's a simple enough game. Children join hands and dance around the farmer, who stands in the center of the circle as they sing. At the end of that first verse, the farmer chooses a wife who joins him inside the circle. At the end of the next verse, the wife takes a child, and so on, until the last verse, when everyone is inside the circle except the cheese, who stands alone outside the circle and has to sing the final verse all alone, the words going like this: "The cheese stands alone. The cheese stands alone. Hi-ho the dairy-o. The cheese stands alone." I was not alone in my fear of being the cheese. Other kids also dreaded being left till last, being made to sing as the standalone cheese. I was a sensitive child, an intelligent child, even back then. And I think those of us who hated this game were certainly not anti-cheese, or anti-music, or anti-participation. I think we had an acute, premature sense of the dread that people feel when they are on the outside. This is something that spans all ages: the fear of being rejected, left out, or worse, forced out. Human nature wants to be on the inside, not on the outside. It's why we have civilization, societies, cities, towns, and neighborhoods. And here is where I, for a moment, if you will allow me, will speak in broad, sweeping terms. For most of history, most kings and rulers have counted on the human desire to be part of a group. Their power depends upon it. Kings are able to threaten subjects with exile, banishment, and even death. If you displease the king, you are out. Submission to a king is based on the same fear that we felt back in the 5th grade of being the cheese who stands alone. And it was into this system that Pontius Pilate was born, back around the same time when Jesus was born. He fit into this system of rulers whose rule was based on fear. He himself served under Emperor Tiberius as a prefect or a governor of the province of Judea. His responsibilities and duties were adequate, but not dazzling. He traveled often throughout the province that he ruled, going back and forth to Jerusalem. He kept the peace through whatever means he deemed fit. He commanded a smallish army of recruited soldiers, about 3,000 men. But this was it for him. This was the height of his career. Just a guy wearing a dress with a title whose name would have been swallowed up in history had he not gotten entangled in that nasty business with Jesus of Nazareth. And when these two meet in today's gospel, it's almost a comedy, although a dark one. Pilate really wants nothing to do with Jesus. Even his wife warns him to wash his hands of the whole business, which he tries to do. In all 4 Gospels, Pilate just cannot understand why the Jewish crowds want him to die. So Pilate goes back and forth between interrogating Jesus and pleading with the crowd, even going so far as to offer somebody else to them for them to kill instead of Jesus. So in this sort of funny Albert and Costello exchange between Jesus and Pilate, we have this conversation. Are you a king? Why do you ask? How should I know? Do I look like a Jew? What have you done? You wouldn't understand my kingdom. Aha! So you are a king. Say whatever you want. It doesn't matter, because my kingdom is not from this world. And here, if the hair on the back of Pilate's neck didn't stand up, it should have. Because here, Pilate should have realized that he was not dealing with some fake king or lunatic imposter or even some radical religious fanatic. No, this guy was different. And why was he different? Because he was not afraid. Do you understand I have the power to kill you? Pilate asks him. I don't care, says Jesus. Killing me won't make any difference at all. And when you can't threaten people with death, you have no power over them. When you cannot manipulate people with fear, you have no power over them. When you can't intimidate people into doing what you want them to do, or else you will kick them out of your circle, you have no power over them. And here, at this moment, Pilate realizes he has no power over Jesus. And so he caves into the crowd, giving them what they want. He capitulates because he's afraid of the crowd too. And Pilate can't lose face both with Jesus and the crowd, because that would make him a weak ruler. And so he admits that Jesus will finally be crucified, and the crowds cheer. It's what they want. And for a moment, he feels like a man, even though deep down inside he knows he's a coward. Unfortunately, the best part of today's gospel is left out. It stops 1 verse too soon, in my opinion. The gospel ends right before Pilate asks Jesus the most profound question. After Jesus and Pilate go back and forth about whether he is a king, and after Jesus says that he is the truth, and people who listen to the truth listen to him, Pilate asks him this question: what then is truth? What then is truth? This is a moment of existential crisis for Pilate, when he realizes he's not the big shot that he thought he was. Tables have turned. Pilate is now seeking truth. Jesus says he is the way and the truth and the life. Pilate can't make such a claim. Pilate can only say, I'm governor of Judea. Yippee, good for you. But finally, who cares? You'll die and turn to dust, just like the rest of us. But this Jesus, yeah, he's different. He's not afraid even of death. Yes, the tables have turned. The governor is now seeking truth from a prisoner, and this simply won't do. Pilate is in danger of losing face now in front of the crowd, like most governors then and now. He is chiefly concerned about keeping undesirables out. And Jesus is proving himself to be most undesirable, in that the peace is being disturbed by healing the sick, by telling people like hookers and thieves that they are actually worth something, by raising the dead back to life. And if you can't keep the sick at home, and if you can't keep the riffraff in jail, and if you can't keep the dead in their tombs, well, then you're not a very good governor, are you? Pilate, it's either you or Jesus. Yes, this Jesus has to go. As much as I want to defend Pilate in today's gospel, the passage speaks for itself. Pilate's identity is entirely stripped bare. It must have been humiliating. No wonder his wife didn't want him to have anything to do with Jesus. She didn't want to see her husband emasculated in a debate with a street preacher from Nazareth. This is hardly becoming of a stately governor and his wife. In this exchange between Pilate and Jesus, we see exactly why Pilate wants nothing to do with this man. And it's the very same reason why many people then and now also want nothing to do with Jesus, because Jesus makes us so very uncomfortable. It is not comfortable for Pilate to be told in no uncertain terms, "You are not God. You may be governor, but you are not God. You can hate me, but I'll forgive you. You can kill me, but I will live. You are not God." And that is the uncomfortable truth for us as well. I am not God. You are not God. We want to be, which is why we ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because we want to be God, and we often think that we're God, and we spend our lives organizing our world into lines of who's in and who's out based on who our enemies are at the time. How many more generations will be born before we learn that when we draw a line between ourselves and another person, Jesus will always take the side of the outsider? It's what the Gospels are all about. It's why Jesus forgives his executioners and why he preaches grace to the criminals who are crucified with him. Jesus knows who he is, and he knows that he embodies truth. Indeed, he is king of it. He knows what it's like to be on the outside, despised by his own people, denied and betrayed by his best friends, abandoned by the crowds just when he needs them most. He knows he is king of truth, king of his truth, not king of your truth or my truth, which would be a most catastrophic thing. If Jesus had aligned himself with Pontius Pilate in his headquarters that day, instead of setting himself apart from Pilate, Jesus would have been just another leader in history, just another governor, perhaps just another king, but a typical one, king of bloodshed, king of prejudice, king of inequality, king of oppression, king of, "I want you in my kingdom, but only if you are rich and beautiful and white and will kiss my feet." But Jesus is no such king, thanks be to God. He is not king of our truth, but his. So like Pilate, we also ask the question, what then is truth? The truth is your king died for you, something other kings do not do. Your King is mighty Counselor, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The truth is, your King rules a kingdom that is created for all people, not just some. The truth is, it is a kingdom ruled by a king who takes nothing from you, but instead gives you everything. The truth is, yours is a king who exchanges places with you, taking the place on the outside where the cheese stands alone, so that you can be on the inside, in his kingdom, where his love and his truth reign forever. Amen.